Portugal or Spain? They sit side by side on the Iberian Peninsula. Both have beautiful beaches, historic cities, incredible food, and some of the best weather in Europe. But here's the problem. If you only have enough time or money to visit one of them, which should you choose? Because despite being neighbors, Portugal and Spain can give you surprisingly different travel experiences. So let's compare them on the things that actually matter. Cost, cities, beaches, food, transportation, crowds, nightlife, and overall experience. And by the end, I'll tell you which country I would choose depending on the kind of traveler you are. Let's start with money. Portugal built a reputation as one of Western Europe's more affordable destinations. And compared with some European countries, it can still offer good value. But don't expect the Portugal of 10 years ago. Lisbon, Porto, and popular areas of the Algarve have become noticeably more expensive, particularly for accommodation during peak season. Spain isn't automatically more expensive either. Madrid and Barcelona can be costly, but travel outside the biggest tourist centers, and you can find excellent value in cities such as Valencia, Seville, Granada, and smaller Spanish towns. For budget travelers, I'd call this surprisingly close. Portugal can still be affordable, but Spain gives you a much larger number of destinations where you can adjust your trip to your budget. Now this is where the two countries really separate. Portugal gives you Lisbon, with its hills, yellow trams, tiled buildings, viewpoints, and the Tagus River. Then there's Porto, with the Douro, historic streets, bridges, and a completely different atmosphere. Portugal's cities often feel intimate. You can explore a lot without feeling overwhelmed. Spain gives you something different. Scale. Madrid feels grand and energetic. Barcelona combines architecture, beaches, and city life. Seville brings Andalusian character. Granada has the Alhambra. Valencia mixes an old historic center with striking modern architecture. If you want sheer variety, Spain wins. But if you prefer smaller cities that are easier to absorb over a short trip, Portugal may actually suit you better. This one is difficult. Portugal's Atlantic coastline can be spectacular. The Algarve is famous for dramatic cliffs, caves, golden beaches, and rock formations. Around Lisbon, you also have places like Cascais and the beaches toward the Atlantic coast. Head farther north and the scenery changes again. Spain, however, gives you enormous coastal variety. From Mediterranean beaches to the Costa del Sol, the Balearic Islands, the Canary Islands, and the rugged northern coast. So here's how I'd separate them. For dramatic Atlantic scenery and road trip landscapes, I'd choose Portugal. For warmer Mediterranean-style beach holidays and more options, I'd choose Spain. Now we might start an argument. Portugal has bacalhau, grilled sardines, seafood, bifanas, francesinhas, and of course, pastéis de nata. Portuguese food can feel simple, comforting, and heavily connected to the sea. Spain brings tapas culture, paella, jamón, tortilla española, churros, regional seafood, and an enormous variety of regional cuisines. And that's Spain's biggest advantage. Travel from Andalusia to the Basque Country, Galicia, Catalonia, or Valencia, and the food culture can change dramatically. Portugal absolutely holds its own. But purely for culinary variety, winner Spain. Although Portugal gets a very serious bonus point for pastéis de nata. If you're visiting several destinations, transportation matters. Spain has a major advantage, its high-speed rail network. Travel between cities such as Madrid, Barcelona, Valencia, Seville, and Malaga can be remarkably convenient. Portugal has good connections between its major cities, particularly Lisbon and Porto. But once you start exploring smaller towns and certain coastal areas, renting a car can become much more useful. Portugal's smaller size, however, is an advantage of its own. You can experience very different landscapes without traveling enormous distances. So, Spain wins for public transportation between major cities. Portugal wins if you want a compact road trip. Here's something that could change your decision completely. Both countries receive huge numbers of visitors, especially during summer. Barcelona, Madrid, Seville, Lisbon, Porto, Sintra, and the Algarve can all become extremely busy. But because Spain is so much larger, you have more opportunities to escape the obvious tourist route without leaving the country. Portugal is smaller, so its most famous attractions can feel concentrated. On the other hand, that compactness gives Portugal an atmosphere many travelers love. A few days can take you from Lisbon to Sintra, the coast, medieval towns, vineyards, or smaller villages. Spain feels bigger and more energetic. Portugal can feel slower and more intimate. Neither is necessarily better. It depends on what you're looking for. If nightlife is a major part of your trip, Spain probably takes this category. Madrid, Barcelona, Ibiza, Valencia, and other Spanish cities have internationally famous nightlife scenes. And evenings often start much later than many visitors expect. Portugal isn't exactly quiet. Lisbon and Porto have plenty of bars, clubs, and late-night neighborhoods, while the Algarve becomes very lively during summer. But overall, winner, Spain. And this is where statistics stop being useful. Portugal can feel easier. It's compact. The distances are manageable. You can spend a morning wandering through historic streets, have lunch beside the water, and watch the sunset from a viewpoint without feeling like you're racing through your itinerary. Spain feels almost like several trips inside one country. The architecture changes. The food changes. The landscapes change. Even the atmosphere can feel completely different from one region to another. Portugal is easier to experience in one shorter trip. Spain rewards you for coming back again and again, and that might be the biggest difference between them. So, Portugal or Spain? Here's my answer. Choose Portugal if you want a more compact trip, dramatic Atlantic scenery, charming historic cities, road trips, coastal landscapes, and a slightly slower travel experience. Choose Spain if you want bigger cities, more regional variety, extensive train connections, stronger nightlife, Mediterranean beaches, and more destinations to choose from. For a first-time traveler with only 5 to 7 days, I'd lean toward Portugal. It's simply easier to experience several different sides of the country in a relatively short amount of time. But if I had 2 weeks or longer, I'd choose Spain, because its size and regional diversity become a huge advantage. And if you still can't decide, there's another solution. Visit both. Start in Portugal, cross into Spain, and turn the argument into one incredible Iberian adventure. So now it's your turn. Portugal or Spain? Which one would you choose? Tell us in the comments. And if you've already visited both, tell us which country surprised you the most. This is Far and Beyond, where the next destination is always worth discovering.